Have you ever stopped to wonder why some stories just completely grab hold of you and refuse to let go, while others just kind of feel a bit flat? Well, the secret almost always lies in how the story is built. In today's Explainer, we're going to dive into the incredible architecture of storytelling. We're going to uncover the hidden blueprints behind your absolute favorite books and movies. So let's get right into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the big idea, explore why narrative layers matter, learn how to spot subplots and parallels, do a quick knowledge check, and finally wrap up by seeing where education meets biblical morality. All right, section 1, the big idea, building the story. To really understand story architecture, we have to know our building materials, right? So first up is the subplot. Now, a subplot is basically a secondary storyline. It usually involves supporting characters, and its entire job is to directly complement the main plot. Think of a narrative like a massive, grand house. If the main plot is that big, grand hallway running right through the center, well, a subplot is like a secondary room off to the side. Sure, it's smaller than the main hall, but it's absolutely essential to the building's overall flow, its function, and really its character. Okay. Our second tool is the parallel structure. These are storylines that follow a similar pattern, theme, or structure, but here's the catch. They often involve entirely different characters or settings. So if subplots are those side rooms in our house metaphor, parallel structures, actually, scratch that. They're more like twin towers on a castle. They mirror each other, they stand completely apart, but they work together to create this incredible structural balance. So just to break down the difference really cleanly, subplots support the story from underneath or alongside, kind of like a strong pillar holding up the main narrative. Parallel structures, on the flip side, stand side by side to reflect or contrast one another. One is a supportive foundation and the other is a structural reflection. Moving on to section 2, why narrative layers matter. Because you might be thinking, why not just tell one simple, straight story? Well, the answer actually ties back to an ancient piece of wisdom found in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9, which says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. It's such a simple concept, but it teaches us that layering elements together always creates a stronger, much richer result. Just like 2 people working together can achieve way more than 1 person, 2 interwoven storylines pack a much greater emotional punch than a single plot line ever could on its own. By weaving these elements together, authors give a story incredible power. These layers give us depth, they give us variety, and they introduce entirely new themes. They let us see completely different sides of a character. Like maybe the hero is ridiculously brave in the main plot, but we see them acting super vulnerable in the subplot. These layers connect back to the main conflict to raise the stakes, or they provide this striking contrast that just makes the main message pop. And here's the so what for you. In school, recognizing these layers makes you an absolute powerhouse at literary analysis. You'll write better essays because you're literally seeing the hidden machinery of the book. But in life, it reminds us of something even more crucial. Real people have multiple layers happening at once too. Nobody is just one simple storyline, right? Understanding narrative layers genuinely helps you understand human complexity. All right, section 3, spotting subplots and parallels. Let's learn how to spot these things in the wild. The next time you're reading a book or watching a movie, I want you to use this 3-step cheat sheet. It's kind of like a secret decoder ring for narratives. Step 1, look for recurring conflicts that pop up outside the hero's main goal. Step 2, spot mirrored events. Ask yourself, did something just happen to a side character that feels awfully similar to what happened to the hero? And step 3, find characters whose journeys match or completely contrast with each other. If you can spot these, boom, you've uncovered the hidden architecture. To really lock this in, let's look at 3 absolute heavy hitters of classic literature. These books have captivated millions of readers, and it's specifically because of this brilliant architecture. We're talking about Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, and Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So in To Kill a Mockingbird, the main plot is Scout's coming-of-age story. It's her quiet journey of growing up and understanding her small-town world. But that innocence is deeply challenged by the heavy subplot of her father, Atticus, and the intense trial of Tom Robinson. The trial is the supporting subplot because it directly drives Scout's overarching journey of losing her childhood innocence. Now, take Les Miserables. This is a literal masterclass in parallel structure. On one track, you have Jean Valjean's desperate journey for redemption and mercy, and on the exact parallel track, you have Javert's unbending, rigid pursuit of the law. Hugo forces us to watch these two men follow parallel paths from completely opposite ends of the moral spectrum. It contrasts their journeys with devastating perfection. And over in Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen sets up two romances right side by side. Elizabeth's fiery, super complicated relationship with Darcy is mirrored perfectly by Jane's sweet, straightforward romance with Bingley. By putting these parallel storylines next to each other, Austen highlights the vastly different ways people approach love and marriage. Okay, Section 4. Test your knowledge. Time for a rapid-fire review to see what's stuck. First question, can you clearly define the difference between a subplot and a parallel structure right now? Think back to our house and castle metaphor. The subplot is that supportive, secondary room complementing the main hall, but a parallel structure features storylines that mirror or contrast each other, standing side by side like twin towers. Now I want you to apply it. Think about your absolute favorite movie, video game, or book. Try to pinpoint one clear subplot. Maybe it's a side quest or a supporting character's arc. Then try to find one set of parallel storylines. Can you think of two characters going through remarkably similar or dramatically opposite experiences at the exact same time? And finally, dig a little deeper. How exactly does that subplot support the main plot? Does it introduce a new theme? Does it show a totally different side of the hero? Think about how those smaller, hidden storylines connect right back to the main conflict to make the whole narrative so much richer. And that brings us to Section 5, Education Meets Biblical Morality. Let's tie this all together. Throughout this entire explainer, we've seen that a single, solitary layer just isn't enough to make a great story. Well, the Heroes Mart Academy Godly Learner series applies that exact same principle to your life. Your education requires the foundational layer of biblical morality deeply intertwined with your academics. Because let's be real for a second, education without morality hurts. Seriously, think about it. What is the point of being incredibly smart, of acing every test and writing perfect literary analyses, if you don't have the moral compass to make good life choices? If you're highly educated but you make choices that cause pain to yourself and the people around you, that single layer of just being smart isn't doing you any good. You need the supporting, parallel structure of morality. This is exactly why we anchor learning in spiritual truths. Romans chapter 8 promises this profound peace of mind to everyone who keeps their thoughts spiritually focused. When you creatively layer your intellectual education with spiritual understanding, the result, just like in a beautifully constructed story, is true harmony, incredible depth, and most importantly, lasting peace. So, as you go out there and analyze the great stories of the world, spotting their subplots and parallel structures, I want to leave you with this final thought. You are the architect of your own narrative. Will you choose to purposefully layer your own life story with the spiritual wisdom that brings lasting peace?